And once you truly appreciate yourself, where you came from, your authentic being, and what made your perspective, that's when you can truly be an artist and express in the world.
The Phil Bach Podcast. Investing, economics, entrepreneurship.
Welcome back to the Phil Bach Podcast. We are live in West Bloomfield, Michigan, right outside Detroit, Michigan. And I'm here with the one and only Darren Riley. Darren is a co-founder of Commune Angels, a brand new angel investment VC fund. He also manages entrepreneur selection and growth for Endeavor Detroit. And he himself is an entrepreneur as the founder of Rapids Air Quality in Grand Rapids. So we're going to talk entrepreneurship. We're going to talk venture capital. We're going to talk diversity and inclusion in VC and startup land. And who knows what else we will talk about. Darren, thanks for joining me on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here, man.
All right, so let's talk about Endeavor Detroit. Endeavor is one of the more interesting organizations, and it's almost like a well-kept secret in some ways. It seems to be very powerful and important, but not a lot of people are aware of what Endeavor is. Tell me about Endeavor. What is it?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So you're not the first to say that. I definitely think globally, we were pretty well renowned, especially within the Latin American market. But let me start from scratch. So Endeavor is a global nonprofit. We really focus on entrepreneurship as a means to catalyze economic growth, right? So what it looks like is our whole thesis that if you support entrepreneurs, especially high growth entrepreneurs, which we'll get a little deeper into, so companies that are really in that scale phase beyond product market fit, we've seen studies where they can create a lot of disproportionate amount of wealth and job creation for the regions we exist. So we're a global organization, about 60 plus countries around the world. My team here locally, which I love and keep dear to my heart, Awesome Mover and Shakers here in Detroit. We cover all of Michigan. And so we have companies all across Michigan from the west side of state in Grand Rapids and Detroit. And our whole job is to find those great entrepreneurs, support them with different services, and watch them kind of grow. And then it's kind of the full circle effect. Once they scale and once they grow, they become successful, and then they give back to the ecosystem of entrepreneurs that come after them.
So when you say the ecosystem of entrepreneurs, is it straight? Are you guys giving cash? Is it like a venture fund? Are you giving, mentorship and classes and tools? Like what is it that you do to work with the entrepreneurs?
Absolutely, it's all of the above actually. So we like to talk about them in buckets. I go with 3 buckets. So we talk about access to markets, access to capital, and access to talent. Right. So we talk about access to talent. Is bringing the right talent to you in a form of mentorship or actually hires. We have a global network, as I mentioned, and so we able to find kind of the best expertise to kind of bring to you and your team. We set up advisory boards. These are mentors who donate their time to kind of help entrepreneurs think strategically about the problems they're trying to solve. And it's not a kind of monetary exchange. It's really for the entrepreneur and advisors who've been there, done that. And we also develop entrepreneurs themselves. So we have professional talent programs with Harvard, Stanford, and SED. We also have our own local programs, which we are starting here locally with Talent Connect, where we bring global mentors to Detroit to really help catalyze some of the functional expertise within our portfolio. So it's access to talent, access to markets. We're all across the globe, as I mentioned before, Latin America, Eastern Europe, of course, the US, and Southeast Asia. And really what we do there is, we have connections within Latin America. Say, for example, your company, you're trying to sell a new product in the Latin American market. We know who's to know from a digital marketing standpoint, from a tax standpoint, legal standpoint in Brazil to get you connected and accelerate your path to market in that different opportunity. So that's access to markets. And last but not least, access to capital. So we do have a venture fund called Endeavor Catalyst. If you are an Endeavor entrepreneur, we can invest with you. But I think the best thing that Endeavor does, and our bread and butter, is that we have connectivity and trust. We built a brand over time where VCs really trust the companies that come through our process. And so we accelerate that path to find your lead investor and your lead investor for your Series A and beyond, right? So sorry, that's a long-winded answer, but really access to capital, access to markets, access to talent is kind of our bread and butter.
It sounds like it's an incredible thing for an entrepreneur to get in with Endeavor and to have access to those resources. I'm friends with Jason Wenk from Formula Folios and Altruist, who I know has had tremendous success going through the program. As Endeavor, what is it that you're looking for from the entrepreneurs? Is there a skill set? Is there a personality type? What is it that you're looking for to identify the entrepreneurs that you think would do best within your ecosystem and that have the most talent?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. I think Jason Wink is actually our poster child here in Michigan. I think it's someone who embodies that pay it forward mentality and that spirit. You can feel it off someone, we come into contact with. You can tell who's more on the giver or more on the taker side. Jason Wink really exhibits that. I am successful because of those who have helped got me here, and I want to make sure that all my success is given to the folks that come after me. And so that's just a spirit that, we want to attract, and I think the Endeavor model is attractive. People just get it, it clicks. So part of your life cycle as an entrepreneur at the early days from, starting product market fit and scale up, Endeavor is here to support you, service you. Hopefully when you become successful, you either join our board, you contribute as a mentor, you help support us from a financial standpoint, invest in Catalyst, our venture fund as an LP, a whole 9 yards, because you believe in the mission, and we actually help you achieve some of the goals that you have. And I think the last thing is, I love what our CEO, Linda Rotenberg, says is, we love people who think really big. And so Jason Wink would tell you, I forget the actual number, but it was something where he believed that his idea was really $1 billion, idea. And, after going through the Endeavor process, he's like, hey, this could be, maybe, 10X what I thought initially in terms of a market perspective with, his idea. So it's really surrounding around people who are going to make you think bigger and challenge you. It's really having that peer network where founders sometimes can be lost in the weeds and kind of be in their own, on their own track solo.
It's also interesting to me that you guys are, you have offices and I know you're big in South America. Mm-hmm. You just set up in Detroit, Michigan, less of a presence in Silicon Valley. I think you do have a presence, but less so than these other areas. Is that by design? Yes,
it is actually. So, we first got brought into America through. Well, first let me back up. The idea was that it was going to be an economic development play, so it was focused on Latin America at first, countries that kind of lacked the entrepreneurial infrastructure. And around the time of the financial crisis, I think that's when the Endeavor board started looking at the U.S. like, wait a minute, there's some second tier and third tier cities that also struggle from a economic development standpoint. And so could our resources be deployed here as well and help pull people up in middle America and other outside the coast, between the coast. So we started in Miami. I think it was a natural bridge because we come in with a strong presence from Latin America, that whole connection, that whole culture there. The second office was Detroit. And we're the second U.S. office. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so now today we have about 8 in the U.S. and we're from Northwest Arkansas, Atlanta, Louisville, Buffalo, New York, that whole region, Puerto Rico. Really amazing teams all across Colorado. I think I went to somewhat, but amazing teams across the board. And really is to focus on how do we cultivate and find the best entrepreneurs at home and not have to send them to the coast, right? So a lot of entrepreneurs, as you probably know, to get the capital, to get the talent, they need to go to San Francisco. And, today I was recording this podcast, you see the doom and gloom, it's really sad what's going out there. My heart poured out for the environment out there, the red sky and everything. And in New York is where it's, really crowded and costly. So how do we really bring talent where it is and keep them where they're at and really bring resources to them? So that's what we're all about.
Yeah, I love that. And, I've been on the VC circuit a little bit off and on, I guess, over the last year and a half between Exponential and some other projects. And, there's kind of early on, you get a little bit as well. If you're going to do this or that, you got to be in Silicon Valley. If you're going to do fintech, you got to be in New York. Maybe if you're crazy, Chicago or Dallas, but like really, New York for fintech and everything else, all other tech companies in San Francisco. I had a very similar experience with exponential ETFs when we started. So we were managing a hedge fund as well before we just focused on ETFs. And I'll never forget, we had a meeting with Goldman Sachs Cap Intro team, right? So Goldman Sachs was servicing parts of the hedge fund, and they have something called Cap Intro where they introduce you to asset allocators that might be interested. Mm-hmm. And they said to us, they said, we're all based in Detroit. They said, well, if you're really going to give this a go in the hedge fund space, you have to be in Greenwich or in Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
You got to be in Greenwich.
Right.
To which I'm thinking to myself, all right, I think I'm good. I think I'm done with the hedge fund space. I think I'll focus on ETF where we can get Greenwich, national distribution, because it's just, look, there are people who are well networked within those concentrated regions, and that works for them. But the idea of democratizing it, the idea of bringing it out to these different local areas where you have different talent and different networks and different ideas and making that more of a level playing field, to me is a really wonderful thing.
Oh, absolutely, man. I think that's going to be the thread of this conversation, man. You already got the juices flowing, is that, it's all about this, like, no matter where you are, where you find yourself in the world, like if we can make this equal playing field, like you mentioned, like that's the goal. That's the goal of our life and our experience. So I'm 100% with you on that ethos.
So you recently just launched a VC fund, an angel investment fund, and I want to talk about that. But before we do, I mean, it's really interesting to hear, your take on Endeavor and selecting entrepreneurs and working with entrepreneurs, because you yourself are an entrepreneur. So I guess it's easier for you to, identify those, qualities and traits that it takes to be an entrepreneur. From my entrepreneurial experience, I could say that everyone thinks that they're an entrepreneur. It's one of those things that everyone assigns, are you above average? It's one of those things where 100% of the people will say yes. But, when the chips come down and people realize that, it's actually a much better quality of life to work for a big company and to get nice benefits and not take your work home, with you necessarily on the weekends. And it is a grind and it is harder than most other ways. And then you really get to see, well, who is truly an entrepreneur or not? Right. You yourself are an entrepreneur. So you launched a company, Rapids Air Quality in Grand Rapids, focusing on air pollution monitoring. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me take a quick step back and kind of how I kind of got into entrepreneurship for sure. Is that so after college, actually attended Carnegie Mellon, went to Deloitte, did cybersecurity, so big into kind of computer science and cybersecurity and protecting information assets. I kind of caught the bug just, throughout my last 2 years at CMU, took some entrepreneurship classes. I didn't even know how to spell it. Sounds bad. It's kind of embarrassing here, but learning that and understanding that it was an eye-opener for me, like ownership and being able to create models and business models in the world that are curated to the problems that you see that exist in the world, right? And so, we live in a capitalist society. We definitely don't want to spend this time debating capitalism or anything like that. But the fact is that we live in a society. So how do we use the models in the world to express and also make sustainable some of the solutions that we want to bring? So I actually moved to Detroit in 2015 to do a startup called, I was the first and only employee at a startup, ag tech startup called Green Collar Foods, where we're doing indoor ag, trying to have this franchise model to tackle two problems. One, economic development from a job perspective in a new economy. We call it green collar foods because, play on blue collar, white collar. So inner city, and really tackle food deserts and health issues, disparities within communities. So that was my first taste, a big fire hydrant taste of water in entrepreneurship. I was wearing, as a first employee, I'm not, have a basic salary to eat oatmeal. But it was a great experience. I went trading for the world. While others like, oh, you just traded that awesome experience with Deloitte to jump on the Detroit train. I was in New York at the time and come to Detroit and experience that. So fast forward, why I labeled that, why I kind of started that is that I always had this itch since that situation where if I'm gonna be an entrepreneur, I'm driven by passion and my values, and I'll go to the wall for it. And I think that's the underlying. I think all of us are a little bit entrepreneurial and creative in a sense. We all have different experiences and outlets. But I really love just finding ways to create creative models to solve issues that are kind of close and near to my identity and human identity. And it really comes to air quality. Developed a good relationship over time with a mentor of mine, James Meeks, and he's the founder of Rapids Ventures, which is a venture studio focused on smart cities. So they consult and invest in a lot of talent and business models that really attack how do we make City 2.0 in the next generation. So, it was a no-brainer for me. This is definitely something that I've experienced within, my life, seeing communities that lack poor air quality or have poor air quality disproportionate in other neighborhoods. What are the long-term health effects of that? A quality of life from an education standpoint. You breathing bad air is bad for your brain from a learning disability standpoint, let alone your lungs, and layer that with COVID and everything that's happening, which there are countless studies that have proven that COVID definitely has having poor air quality increases the mortality rate of COVID and things like that. So I was really attracted, jumped on board around January, really understanding and figure out the business model. So we're starting in Grand Rapids. Our whole goal there is to have a network of micro air quality sensors, high grade, and provide that data to the stakeholders who can, one, move the needle on initiatives, and then two, inform the citizens, arm them with data to understand what they are breathing and the equity of their air. So yeah, it's really exciting. One other thing is that it's kind of a nuanced part of it is that a lot of counties only have one air monitor to cover the whole city. Detroit is fortunate that we have about 3 or 4, so I had to double check that, but most counties probably have one to cover everything. So imagine we're here right now and we check our phone and we see the air quality. That air quality could be downtown, right? And they're not really giving you accurate depiction here. And there's studies that prove from block to block there can be a drastic change in air quality.
And through the process of launching the company, of getting angel investment and VC funding and, just going through that whole process of launching this company, were there parts of that process that you could see were broken that later now as starting your own VC fund that you feel like, well, I want to fix this or that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me take that. So we actually haven't, so all the funders kind of put sweat equity. We haven't gone for outside capital first. My overall thesis is still different from the coast, is that, in the coast, I can put an idea on the table. Oh, I got a Bitcoin 4X, and someone wants to invest in it. I do believe, that's why I love the Midwest. It's a love-hate relationship maybe a little bit, because you want to see you go a little too far, improving product market fit, really have a lot of revenue before you actually get that first seed fund. But on the coast, it's like, just kind of throwing money everywhere because there's so much around in that market. So I think there's a healthy middle ground. I think it's emerging from a culture perspective. But me, philosophically, I want to, in my own conscience, if I'm taking on people's money and dollars, I want to make sure I prove product market fit. I think that's just for my own self, and make sure it's a viable idea. I think you can do that with your own time, and things like that, and being very creative. I think that's where the ingenuity of entrepreneurs come about. You'll need to build an app. All apps are just processes. You can cobble together Excel sheets. Really, it comes down to, especially this day and age, there's nothing new under the sun. You can buy it off the shelf. It's really, what is the business model? What is the human interaction within your company that could scale, leveraging technology? And that's coming from a technologist who always wants to build that for everything. Yeah. So long story short, we haven't went down that, but we are probably considering raising towards the end of next year, depending on how this first pilot goes with Grand Rapids.
But you were able to fund the whole pilot just yourself through, like you said, sweat equity and.
Yeah. Yeah. So the partners at the table, so Rapids Ventures, they did a lot of the funding upfront, capital expense, and they got kind of brought on as kind of the operator to really bring it to life.
So congratulations on the launch of Commune Angels. So you just put out a press release just recently, right? That it is let me read this, right? Commune Angels was launched to expand access to angel investing in capital. We invest in scalable consumer enterprise and life science companies that transform lives. Diversity is essential to the transformative innovation, and our members are committed to contributing their unique experiences, relationships, and resources to drive better outcomes for investors, portfolio companies, and their customers.
Yeah.
So that's a mouthful, but that's a hell of a mission statement. I mean, tell me personalize that for me. Tell me what that really means.
Oh, for sure. I truly stand behind this, and I think I know for a fact, everyone across the table that I work with, I love this team. We meet every Saturday, 8:30 a.m. for the last month. So there's a lot of work in the background, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of stuff we really button up to a T. And we want to bring that like Class A excellence when it comes to organization for our members and also for the entrepreneurs that we engage with. So really what it comes down to is that we've talked about, since I've been in Detroit, been in entrepreneurship space, time and time again, if you get two Black folks, to be real, two Black people from different entities, organizations in the same space, we're going to say, man, there's a gap. There's a gap between funding, the people who know how, the people who get access to that, and there's a big gap in networks, right? There's times where you can be in Detroit and, go to an entrepreneurial happy hour and look around and, oh, wait, it's just me, and we want to change that. And how we change that is this information, right? We think that by being out there, putting ourselves out there, we all work in this space, whether supporting, being entrepreneurs, being a lawyer, NVC, I'm talking about my whole team here. We've been in this space, so we have the connections. We understand how this game works. Is bringing that information not only to the entrepreneurs, but also to the investors and getting people comfortable. And our whole thesis is really, you have diverse investors in the room, entrepreneurs who are diverse, feel comfortable presenting their ideas and trust, and have a little bit of trust, especially with that family of friends around at the C level. And also our thesis is that diversity of thought on the investor side will also see the value of some of the diverse ideas, right? And this is the last time I'm going to use thesis, I hope so, but it's been an exciting word that I'm tossing around here, is that we all have our human experience, from, rather it's raw, good moments, pain, all that to make our authentic self. And if I see a problem, I might see that problem different from you. And if I see that problem different from you, I'm probably going to bring a solution to the table different from you. And so by giving access to capital at the table, you open up the gate for innovation. And I truly, truly believe that I've seen this, I am living this, is that when you support diversity, you're not supporting it for the sake of checking a box, oh, I've funded a Black founder, it can make a press release about it. You're really funding innovation that's going to solve problems for the generation to come.
Yeah, look, I mean, when you look at the diversity inclusion statistics in venture capital and in the startup world, it's empirical. I mean, it's a fact. You know, the stats are an embarrassment to the industry. I mean, they're terrible. So, you know, and I think there's a lot more awareness now about that than there was probably even 5 years ago, which is a good thing. And I think a lot of people are committed to making changes. You know, it's hard, I think, for a lot of people to really identify, well, how can I make a change? What can let's say, you know, I myself am in a position, I'm a venture capitalist, I'm in a position to make more diverse investments and to fund more diverse founders, but I still have my network of people from my days at Stanford, and that's not a diverse network, right? So what steps do you think people should take from both sides, from the founder and startup side and from the investing side to really help address the issue?
Yeah, I think it's I agree. I think it's both sides for sure. I think, and we learned this out here at Endeavor. To be honest, you know, we are very intentional about the spaces that we occupy, making sure that we have a panel, we have diverse speakers, making the room comfortable to where entrepreneurs like themselves and are able to let go and relax and be able to really express their value, which is true and authentic. And vice versa, you know, in the entrepreneurial landscape is getting out there. You know, you might get tons of no's, people who don't get it, don't let it discourage you, but chalk it up and trust your authentic self and your experience and not give up a second time. I know that from my situation in prior ventures, you know, hearing no a lot of times, or it sounds like, this guy, people don't get it, you know, and that could be, especially as, you know, someone who doesn't probably come from an entrepreneurial family, could be discouraging. You don't have a lot of imagery of that.
It's discouraging for anyone.
Oh, absolutely. For sure, 100%. But I do think that there is a risk of that fatigue. And so I think both sides, I think on the investor side, being more intentional about the spaces that you create. I think now we're in COVID, and, you know, we can have some webinars. We have more access to people. You know, do a webinar on bringing diverse founders to the table and let them talk authentically about, you know, their interactions with investors and how they really feel about being overlooked, et cetera. So maybe valued, something not, but let that discernment happen and create that environment. And I think that, on the entrepreneur side, I really feel as though just keep at it. I think we all know as entrepreneurs, back to my original point, that diversity creates innovation. If you truly believe in what you're working on and you're solving a real customer need, very customer centric, and just keep at it. And you'll find a way. You'll find a way to make that happen to where they're coming at your door, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Sides, yeah.
So when you talk about diversity, obviously racial diversity, gender diversity, geographic diversity, right? You guys are based in Detroit. I mean, what's the overall framework? Is that it? Are there other ways to look at it?
I think if you look at the current landscape and different demographic lens, you can prove, you know, the diversity of veterans, LGBTQ community, elderly, you know, there are a lot of different angles you can put it. It's definitely not just, you know, skin color, ethnicity, and gender. We definitely look at the full spectrum of lens and what it really truly means. And that's what we want from our investors too, right? And I think that, you know, our whole idea, and hence the word commune, is that we really want to make a community, a true community entrepreneurship, that where everyone, no matter what race, creed, orientation, et cetera, feels comfortable. They don't have to wear a mask. They feel themselves. And that's the values that we want. And that's the future of entrepreneurship that we want in this world.
So when you talk about the value that having a diverse set of perspectives brings to, let's say, a venture fund or to different entrepreneurial endeavors, you yourself, I mean, that concept of having diverse perspectives, you know, what does that mean to you? I mean, are you an embodiment of that? And if so, how and why?
Oh, totally, man. You know, so one of my favorite philosophers' quotes, and it really sticks to me, and I'll kind of get into kind of experiences, like, he who has the strongest why can bear any how, right? It's Friedrich Nietzsche. And it's really stuck to me in understanding my why growing up, right? So when I think about my diverse experience and things that I bring to the table, is definitely around the criminal justice space and understanding my privilege, even being a Black man in this world and being where I am, going to one of the top universities, playing basketball my whole career, and avoiding that system. And like, that is privilege within my kind of ecosystem. And, you know, it stems from, quite frankly, my father and growing up and him being incarcerated when I was when I was 5 years old. And I think that really molded me. At 5 years old, that's kind of when you're shaping your identity and everything like that. And so, I love him to death. And I think that, that experience, I wouldn't have, always wish it was a different way, but I wouldn't have it any other way because I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have the why that I have, right? I wouldn't trade that for the world. And so one of my favorite things that I've kind of been on recently, rest in peace to the great Kobe Bryant, is one interview he says, and someone asked him, he started his marketing firm or something like that, and he's like, so what does the interaction look like? Or somebody paying for your service? And like, what would you tell them first session? He's like, honestly, they shouldn't have to pay me for this. All I'm gonna tell them is like, be yourself and be authentic self. And he said it with such passion, and he has that Mamba look in his eyes where he's like, he's literally like, once you truly appreciate yourself, where you came from, your authentic being and what made your perspective, that's when you can truly be an artist and express in the world. And over time growing into that, I'm still growing into that, right? And I will say, through being a child of the criminal justice experience, has shaped me in understanding the systems around and what way can I play in moving the needle from a system standpoint, right? So bringing that to air quality, right? So if you are, my father has asthma, and you can't say, I can't say that it was genetic or predisposed because smog in Queens, New York, where he grew up in the 80s. Who knows? But I will say that that has limited his ability to work, after being incarcerated, when he has restricted to physical labor and things of that nature. And so, me playing a role and giving my all, like that's experience where that's when I say earlier, like I can go through a wall for this, is that I look back at my own identity and identities that are around me and my loved ones, and I can go through a wall of trying to find solutions to unravel the barriers for living a good human experience for people that are attributed to my identity. And I think that's for any LGBTQ. They have that experience, or if you're a handicap and you have that experience, you're a veteran, you have that experience, holding on to that authentically and being okay to express that. There's a lot of times even think about it's probably much more public I've been about it, but shy away from that experience. But that is me, and I get energized by it. And so I think kind of falling into that.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing. I mean, when you look at the criminal justice system and you look at the people that are directly in it, and then the unintended consequences of the people around those people, and the way it makes the cycle harder and harder to break. Your father has asthma, and he's a convict. He's an ex-convict. It's almost impossible for him to get a good job. And how does that affect not only him, but the other people in his life? How do you break that cycle? It becomes so difficult to do so. So it's really it's a great thing that you're, as successful as you are, but also that you're cognizant of that and not forgetting that hey, that's something that you lived through, and that's something that you want to use your success to be able to address.
Oh yeah, man, 100%. Yeah, and I think that I get to it's not very political here, but we have our experiences, and we all make mistakes in this world, and our idea. I think I like this analogy of like thinking about like. It always comes down to like mice in a maze for me. But so if you have a study, right? You have a study. I think so. There's an analogy of like having the environment. You have the environment, and people say can't blame the environment all the time. And you got people like, oh, just it's your own self. I think it's a mix. You can't separate nurture and nature, and that's something that I pull away positively from that experience. I think a lot of growing up, you're always very egotistical. You think that, oh, that person did that because they wanted to, et cetera. But then as I got older, mature, and see the world a bit better, I see that there's also forces that are influencing you. Think about, mice in a maze. You got the goal of the mouse is to get out of the maze and get all the cheese. But you have little wall blocks where you may put chocolate or something like that, where it's not the end goal to get out, but it's like a little crevice here, and that chocolate is in one maze, and then you got the other study where there's no chocolate. The mice might get stuck and trapped within the maze because he wanted to get that chocolate that was part of his system, whereas another mice probably just went through and got through the exit, right? So I think my goal in using that analogy is like, how do we make sure that the systems are playing field, which is hard philosophically. We will never solve it as human, but we can get to 99.9% as long as we could keep pushing this philosophy. Is how do we remove as many systematic barriers to where humans can truly live their best lives, right? If they want to rap, they can rap. They want to make clothes, they can make clothes, whatever it is, they want to contribute to the human experience. Let's remove the barriers and allow them to do so.
I always close with this question. We touched on some obstacles that you've overcome, but the question I like to close with is, tell me an obstacle that you've had either in your personal life or your career that you either found a way to work around or you just persisted through.
I think it does come through this watershed moment for me, right? So I come out of Carnegie Mellon, student debt. I mean, it was like $60,000 a year there. Man, I came out pretty well for myself, but going into the industry and making good money, living with my grandfather. And then one morning it's like, I'm going to go to Detroit and cut my salary in half and really learn what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Quite frankly, and rightfully so. I think my family was encouraging me not to do that leap of faith. But I got in my Nissan Altima, my friends know as the Batmobile, that is no longer with us, rest in peace, and drove down to Detroit and started that career. And it was a struggle. It was a big struggle. My mentor I alluded to before, Ron Reynolds, we were in it together. It was a great experience from a learning standpoint, growing food, creating IoT sensors, selling food, creating an operational model that's sustainable. We've set up a farm in Connecticut. So I spent some time kind of in those parts that you were talking about earlier with the private equity folks. And a ton of learning. And so it was a watershed moment for me because they're definitely down. It was definitely mental breaks during that experience. Like, I was privileged. I had this experience that I just messed up my whole career trajectory, taking this venture. Maybe I'm too egotistical and I think I solve the problems of the world. Like, who am I? It was a very humbling moment for me. I think the people who were with me holding my hand during that time understood what I was going through mentally. And it took, a while to uncover that and get my confidence again. And I think it ties into why I started that watershed moment is because it just showed me authentically. I see a parallel universe where I'm working at a consulting firm and just, living that nice and comfortable life and not really pushing myself. I've been pushed here and it's formed me and molded me and really just pushed me to be like, you can't be anybody else but yourself and where you come from in that culture. And alluding back to, kind of cap it with this, is, going back to the Commune Angels, my experience as, a Black male, my identity is that if we all just kind of buy into our culture identity and that love and what makes us us, and we want to make that into the business world, because, also part of my philosophy is that is the world in totality. We try to separate life and business, and I get, that balance and everything, but they influence each other. And why we want to make that distinction is because we are afraid. We're really scared to be our full selves at work. And now what if we can create a world where, back to our commune kind of values and our culture and the culture that we want to live here at Rapids Air Quality and the culture that we do live at Endeavor, Detroit and beyond is be your true self first. And you will create a community and create an attraction where people want to work and we can do great things together. So I was in on that. Is I really feel as though that watershed moment for me just pushed me to a degree where I can't be anybody else but my authentic self, and I truly love it, and will continue to be that.
That's awesome, Darren. Where can people learn more about either investing in Commune Angels or getting access to capital if they're a young entrepreneur?
Yes, please. We're accepting applications. We're just starting to get more members in the network. You can apply at communeangels.com. You'll see Get Funded as a tab at the top. I forget the actual /, but go to Get Funded tab and follow the application process. We have great infrastructure. We have a great team. We'll be following up. You won't get lost in the weeds. You'll have authentic feedback on what we see, whether we pass or move down the chain. So we're here. We're your family, and we want to make that environment.
That's awesome. Thank you again for joining me on the show.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much.
Congratulations on the new fund launch and everything else you're doing. Thank you to the audience for your time and attention. We'll be back next week.
Thank you for listening to the Phil Bach Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to drop a review. This show was published for entertainment purposes only and is not investment advice. Please contact a licensed professional before making any investments. Some of the securities discussed on the show may be owned by its participants. Opinions expressed on the show may not reflect those of their employers. Stay hungry and stay foolish.